Thanks. Attorneys for a group of court defendants who want class action status to sue over long delays in getting a public defender are taking the case to the Wisconsin Court of Appeals. The case is filed in Brown County Circuit Court against members of the State Public Defender Board. In a ruling earlier this month, Judge Thomas Walsh denied class action status, saying there are too many reasons why a public defender appointment could be delayed, and a judgment from the case would not apply uniformly to every potential plaintiff. According to filed documents this week, the appeal argues that there is, quote, common policy that routinely denies timely counsel to all class members. Plaintiffs say if an attorney isn't appointed within the first 30 days of an initial appearance, it deprives a person of their constitutional protections.